Who's ready for Julianna Raye? You guys ready to have a good time? I don't know if an audience has ever been this pumped up for a mindfulness message, right? But this is going to be great. I've told you enough about the value she's added to my life, so with nothing further, I'm going to turn the stage over. Julianna, please come on up. No, I said it's Julianna Raye. Come on now. Oh, hey, thanks for being here. Thanks for being here. Hey, here you go.
Thank you.
That button moves it forward.
Okay.
That's all you need to know.
Fantastic.
Have a great time.
Thank you. Where is that mic? Is it back there? Yeah. Do I need it? Yeah, okay. We're not going to worry about it then. Hey, everybody. I just wanted to start by congratulating you all for all the hard work you've been doing with the Miracle Morning. I think it's wonderful, and the commitment that you've shown in actually coming to be together as a community here over this weekend. So I want to acknowledge you for that. I think it's wonderful that Hal has created this infrastructure for you to marry your deepest sense of purpose with your dedication. And I'm also really thrilled that Hal has included in this process this big capital S at the beginning of your Savers routine, this silence. And I thought that what we might do is something kind of unconventional. I thought we actually might begin in silence together. Coming together as a community is really powerful, equally powerful when you communicate with one another, and also when you ride on the energy of the room in silence together. So we're just going to do a couple of minutes of silence, and then we'll begin the program. So go ahead, and if you like to close your eyes, you can close your eyes. Whatever it is that you normally do on your morning routine, feel free to do that. If you meditate, if you just contemplate, if you pray. And let's begin. So, show of hands, everybody. How many of you here found that last couple of minutes pleasant in some way? Awesome. This is a group that's familiar and comfortable with silence. And how many of you found it challenging in some way? Maybe your mind wandered, you had a hard time concentrating, you got distracted, you wondered if you were doing it right, maybe other people are better at silence than you are. That kind of thing. So today I'm going to teach you a set of techniques and strategies and of course it's all optional. You're free to do whatever works for you. But it will hopefully help you optimize your time in silence so that if you're experiencing it as pleasant, you can go even deeper with that pleasant experience. And if you're experiencing it as challenging, you know how to work productively with the challenges. All right. So I'd like you to think of this as going to a mind gym, right? So let's say that silence is the gym, right? If you walk into a gym and you sort of wander around to the equipment and you might try a little here, you might try a little there, it's not going to be a very effective or efficient workout. But if you walk into the gym and you understand the equipment and you know the muscles it works and you know what you need to do to accomplish what you need to accomplish, it makes your time there more efficient. It optimizes your time. So the skills and techniques I'm going to show you will help you do that, not just in silence, but actually in everyday life. Another way you can think of this analogy working is that we're actually going to be working a set of mental skills. And this is a long-term gain that we're talking about. So in the same way that you wouldn't expect to get ripped overnight, you know, it's a funny thing with meditation. A lot of people expect to just sort of sit down and drop into some kind of deep state. And then they get frustrated or they get upset with themselves if they're not able to do that. You have to think of it like a long-term process. And every effort you put in shows its rewards over the long term in the same way as going to the gym does. Here's the kind of cool thing. When you go to the gym, you're working with this limited body, right, that can only get so ripped. But when you go to the Mind Gym, we know that I think we work with, we use maybe 10% of our brain power. So it's really limitless, the possibilities, when you begin to grow the mind through this set of skills. So, mindful business is wise business. You may not know it, but how many people of you have heard the term mindfulness before? Is that a familiar term? See, that's quite extraordinary for me. I mean, really, just a few years ago, nobody really knew what it was. And one of the things that's fueled this is businesses have now adopted mindfulness programs, mindful leadership programs, mindfulness in the workplace, because it creates a better work environment, and it's also preventative health care. So the reason that so many companies are adopting this is actually because of the hard science that's been done that shows tremendous value in mindfulness meditation. And I actually participated in a study at UCLA. They scanned my brain with an MRI, and they compared it to someone of an equal age and background, and the findings are extremely consistent. What they found is that people who meditate, their brains degenerate at a much slower rate. Everybody's brain degenerates, but their brains degenerate at a much slower rate than people who do not meditate. And they also have this neuroplasticity, which is this, it's associated with the ability to learn and absorb information. So those are a couple of benefits, but there are a lot more. As you can see, there's improved focus, clarity, and productivity, which of course all of us here, that's so much the theme of this weekend. It's very relevant for the work we're doing here. Let's see. Yes, heightened creativity and empathy, lower stress, lower blood pressure, strengthen your immune system. So this is a really important note. The results are not just psychological, they are physiological. And that gets more and more palpable over time, which I'll go into in a little bit. Yes, and heighten emotional well-being overall. Okay, so that is why I am here to help you have the best silence ever. Right? Oh, you got it. I'm glad one person got it. All right. So we're here to have the best year ever, and I'm going to show you how to have one portion of that year be your best ever, your best silence ever. The system that I'm going to teach you it was hand-selected by Harvard University, their medical school, their top neuro lab. And they chose it because it is a unique mindfulness system. It has a couple of really special aspects to it. It's highly adaptable, meaning that you can basically find what interests you and motivates you to practice and use that to focus on with this system. And also, you can do it in action, which is really lovely. It's well designed so that you can take this and actually do these exercises out in the world while you're exercising, while you're eating. And as we go on, hopefully you'll understand the value and benefit of spending your time that way. So I'm going to kind of fill you in on all this in a few ways. I'm going to start by telling you my personal story of how I came to mindfulness and the impact that it had on me. You know, the effects can be subtle at first, so I thought it might benefit you all to get a sense of its potential, at least for this personal individual. I found that with this practice, it gives you what you need, and that varies from person to person. It really is an individualized process. So I'll just tell you my story, and then I'm going to give you some definitions. So those workbooks are perfect. We'll get the definitions going. Then we're actually going to do practice. And then we're going to have a Q&A so that by the time you leave here, you're absolutely clear about what it is you're doing, why you're doing it, how to do it, any questions you may have. So does that sound good, everybody? Awesome! You guys are great. Okay, here we go. This is the scariest part for me. So, I moved to LA in the early 90s, and my objective was to be an Oscar-winning actress and a Grammy-winning singer-songwriter. Small objectives. And I wrote a to-do list that year. I actually wrote a to-do list. I had heard that you write it down and it helps things happen. And on that to-do list I had get an agent, I had get a guest starring spot on a primetime TV show. I actually wrote it that specifically. And I had get a record deal with a major label. So at the end of that first year, I had actually accomplished all of my goals. Thank you. Thank you. I got an agent. He didn't have a lot of power. So during the busiest season of the year, called pilot season, he sent me on one audition, but I booked it. It was as a guest star on a show called The Commish, and I really knew I had made it when they flew me up to Vancouver business class, and I had a fruit basket in my hotel room. The fruit basket to me was the ultimate sign of success. And the part involved a lot of crying, which I was really good at. So I actually really loved doing that, and I came back down to LA, and just a few months later, I got a record deal with Warner Brothers. I was signed by the president of the company, and I was produced by an icon, a guy named Jeff Lynne. Maybe you've heard of his band ELO. Evil Woman. You know that song, right? So that's Jeff. He produced artists like, I don't know, Tom Petty, George Harrison, Ringo Starr, all these big dudes, and me. And it was a thrill, actually, to get to work with this guy. It was like being in boot camp. I learned a tremendous amount in a very short period of time. And the record came out. It was all original music, and it was extremely well received. I got a lot of critical acclaim. I got an A in Entertainment Weekly. I got one of the top 10 records of the year on National Public Radio. And things were going really well. And the promotions department did not know what to do with it. It was quirky. Grunge was really peaking at that time, and it was definitely not a grunge record. And cut to 2 years later, I was waitressing again. And I was miserable, as you can imagine. I didn't feel that waitressing was my calling. And I didn't know what to do. I was really feeling lost. But I have to say that in that moment, I had an epiphany. And this really speaks to this issue of finding your deepest why, finding your deepest purpose. Because I left out a critical piece of information about that first year when things went so great in LA. And the piece of information I left out is that that was actually my darkest year of my life emotionally. I was deeply, deeply depressed. I was in tremendous pain. I was in so much pain that on many a morning I woke up and I thought about how I could end my life. And I managed to dig myself out of that hole at that time. I decided that regardless of how much pain I was in, sometimes you need to live for other people. And I moved forward, and then life came along with opportunities and buoyed me and pulled me into the future, and I went along for that ride. But I never really addressed the source of my suffering. I didn't know how. There were no resources that I could find. It didn't just seem psychological to me. I didn't know what to do about it. So what I realized in that moment was, okay, I'm miserable as a waitress, but if I'm being perfectly honest with myself, I wasn't happy even when I was living my life's purpose, doing my music, because I was constantly frightened that the rug would be pulled out from under me. I depended so much on the pleasure and the fulfillment that I got from doing music that I was terrified that if that went away, I wouldn't know what to do. And in that moment, when it did go away, I realized that is no way to live your life. How fulfilled can you really be by your success if you are hanging on to it for dear life? And what about all those moments leading up to it? I mean, we get to do what we love a certain portion of the time. What about all the other time? Don't you want fulfillment then? Don't you want fulfillment standing on line at the post office? Sitting behind your desk? Don't you want as many moments of your life as possible to be fulfilling, regardless of what they look like? I did. I realized that. I needed unconditional happiness. I needed well-being that didn't hinge on my external conditions or even on my internal conditions, whether my mood was up or down on any given day. I knew I needed that. I had no idea how to get it. So I was in therapy at the time, and I had a lot of anxiety, and the therapist suggested meditation, and I really didn't know anything about it. And I'm a pragmatist by nature, and I said, okay, well, if this will help with my anxiety, then I'll give it a shot. I'll commit to it. I didn't even necessarily link my purpose with this meditation thing. I just knew, like, okay, this is supposed to help. It's holistic. I don't have to take medication. I'm sensitive to medication, so I'm going to give this a try. So I did. I gave it a try. I had no idea what I was doing. Looking back, I mean, I did it for 2 years completely on my own with just the 5 minutes of instruction. I wish I had compressed that, but it happened the way it happened. 2 years later, I started having experiences that I couldn't quite understand. They didn't fit into any paradigm I was familiar with. I had a background in psychology, and it wasn't psychological. It was something physical, like little things, just tiny things like, gee, at the end of that exhale, something felt really nice. What was that? These types of things, very small things that I began to notice because I had developed some momentum with practice. And I knew at that time that I needed a teacher. But I also knew myself well enough to know that if my teacher was in any way woo-woo, do you know what I mean? My teacher was in any way airy, or really at that time, if someone had said chakras to me, I would have, run out the building screaming. So I knew that I needed to find a teacher who sounded logical to me, who made sense to me. And I was protective enough of this because I knew if I didn't, I ran the risk of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. The meditation, I ran the risk of dumping it. And I knew that it was doing something for me. I was protective. So, amazingly, it really only took a couple months after I got clear about that, and I was introduced to my teacher, a guy named Shinzen Young. And I listened to his cassettes. This is how long ago this is. And my mind was totally blown. I mean, this guy, I just thought, wow, it's so logical. It makes so much sense. Oh my God, of course. Yeah, there's some weird stuff, but for the most part, I totally get it. So I called up for more cassettes, and the woman on the other end of the phone said, hey, there's a retreat happening in a couple of weeks. Why don't you just come on that? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I'm going from half an hour a day to an entire week of silence and sits that are from 5 in the morning till 10 at night, okay? I don't know if I can handle this. But I was just desperate enough and just motivated enough. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to do this. So I wrote my to-do list, and it had one thing on it: achieve enlightenment. My game plan was, I'm going to go to this retreat. The sits were optional. I'm going to do all the sits. And then I'm going to achieve enlightenment, and I'm going to get on with my life because I got a lot of shit to do, right? So that was the game plan. It didn't quite go that way. However, in the middle of the retreat, I had an experience that was a life-defining experience. So I'm at lunch, and I'm eating a salad. And I bit into a radish, and as I'm chewing the radish, I had dropped into a deep state of concentration. And my attention was drawn to the radish, and I became fascinated with the experience of chewing it. I noticed that there was a lot of heat energy. I noticed that there was a lot of tingly energy, and I found it fascinating. And I was able, because I was in a high state of concentration, to trace the heat and the tingling as it moved across my jaw, and then it became just this pleasant energy. And it moved up through my head, and the next thing I knew, I had a geyser of ecstatic bliss shooting out the top of my head from eating this radish. So the moral of the story is eat your vegetables. I'll be here all day, right? Okay, anyway, but that was a pivotal moment for me, because in that moment I realized, wait a minute, this body and mind, there is nothing intrinsically wrong with this body and mind. All I did was sit for a few days using these techniques, and I had this experience, and I've never experienced, this is not subtle stuff. I catch a buzz from yoga. You know, I had been doing yoga for years before that. This was not subtle. This was a whole other level. And I thought, okay, so wait a minute. I could just do a lot of this sitting, do a lot of these techniques, and I can rewire my brain. I can rewire my experience. I can create a new normal for myself. Yeah, it's going to take a lot of work, but I saw a way through where I had been stuck. And that's exactly what I've done. I dedicated myself. That became my new deep sense of purpose, was to completely rewire the foundation of my experience, to start there so that everything else I do comes from that. And it created in me, you know, does it make life perfect? Oh, absolutely not. Do I have problems? Sure I do. Do I have, you know, pain and suffering? Oh, yes, I do. However, what it's really done for me is given me tremendous resilience. Tremendous resilience. And just to break it down a little bit for you, when I talk about bliss, what it really comes down to is a combination of emotional well-being, tranquility, and energy. But when those cross-multiply, the result is exponential. And that's what happens when you do a lot of practice. Tranquility, energy, and emotional well-being get a chance to cross-multiply, and you get these bliss states. But more important than any individual state that you may fall into, what you're really doing over the long term in this mind gym is you are creating a new normal for yourself. You're elevating your baseline permanently. Permanently. So this is lasting change. So in other words, you know, and I have to say, the most profound thing for me is when I look back and consider that woman that I once was, where she was caught, compared to where I am now. And I have so much compassion because she was so lost and in so much pain. And now I'm in a position where, yes, I have this new normal, but more important than that, whatever comes up for me, whatever challenges come up, I know how to work with them productively so that they feed my emotional well-being, my tranquility, and my energy. I know how to convert the pain of suffering into a higher and higher state of wellness. And that is true empowerment. And that's what I'm hoping to give you all here today. And I thought that maybe by sharing my story, it would help you get a sense of the value of it in the long term. And you know, that story, just take what means something to you out of that. I'll also let you know that they've done studies that show in, you know, as little as 8 weeks' time doing a normal amount of sitting, you know, doing a normal amount of class time, they've seen dramatic, Harvard just did a study, they've seen dramatic changes in the brain as a result of just 8 weeks. So you don't have to get quite as immersive as I've gotten in my life in order to have the benefits. So let's talk about, first, you know, I missed a slide there. Let me give you a definition. Mindfulness, as it's defined for us here in this room today, is a set of 3 attentional skills: concentration power, sensory clarity, and equanimity, all working together. concentration power, sensory clarity, and equanimity all working together. That, there are a lot of, mindfulness means a lot of things these days. It's thrown around a lot. There's a colloquial idea of it. Pardon? What do you say? Oh, yes. Mindfulness is a set of 3 attentional skills all working together. And those skills are concentration power, sensory clarity, and equanimity. So let's get into the definitions of these. Concentration power, the ability to focus on what you deem relevant. And of course, all of us in this room, that's immediately understandable here for us today. Who does not want to spend more time focusing on what they consider important and less time on the distractions or the things that we consider unimportant? So I think that's pretty straightforward. Also, you can think of concentration power as the ability to get deeply absorbed in what you're focusing on. So it is about the continuity of focus, being able to sustain that focus, and the depth of focus, the degree to which your focus is penetrating. Sensory clarity, the ability to track and explore sensory experience in real time. So what do I mean by sensory experience? Sensory experience is just a way to say the information that you're getting from all of your senses at any given time. So right now, you're hearing my voice, maybe you're feeling yourself in your seat, the temperature of the room, and you're seeing the stage, you're seeing the environment. That's all sensory information. That is your moment-by-moment sensory experience. Does that make sense to everybody? We good with that? Yes?
Yeah.
Great. So the ability to track and explore sensory experience in real time means that you can stay with the experience moment by moment and discover it as it's unfolding. You can discover the qualities, kind of like if you think about a taster, someone who's tasting a recipe and is able then to break down, oh, well, there's this much salt, and then there's a little bit of chicken stock, and then I'm also tasting, those tasters who do that with recipes. So same idea here. You're able to, with your attention, really become clear about the qualities that make up any given experience. And why this is valuable? Well, for one thing, it initiates insight. You discover things rather than making assumptions about things, right? But deeper than that is, what tends to happen in life is that we get overwhelmed because things, different aspects of our life cross over and cross-multiply. Again, there's that word, cross-multiply. So for example, let's say you're having a hard day, you're driving on the freeway, someone cuts you off, then you go home and a check has bounced, and then you get into a fight with your boyfriend or girlfriend, something like that. By the time you're in that fight, you've actually dragged along with you these other events that happen in your day, and everything comes to bear in that moment, in that fight. So it isn't just what's happening right now. It's all the other things that figure in to create overwhelm. Well, the exact same things happens in our senses. We're getting a lot of information at the same time, and we can get overwhelmed as a result. So for example, let's say you hurt your knee, right? And then you have the thought, oh my God, I hope I didn't totally screw up my knee, right? What's going to happen? Then you're going to get fear. Right? And then the fear might make the pain more intense. And then you have the thought, oh, I really did something this time. And then you've got the fear. And then the fear makes the thought, I'm paralyzed. Whatever it is that, that happens. So you can see how these different sense aspects feed one another, cross-multiply, and the next thing you know, you're suffering. Whereas, if you are able to deconstruct your sense experience, if you are able to recognize moment by moment, oh, there is fear happening. Oh, and I notice where the fear is located. Got that. And oh, there's a thought happening. I'm hearing it here. And yes, the thought, oh, then there's the fear and the thought are going together. And oh, I have the physical pain happening. When you can deconstruct your experience like that, it becomes manageable. And it breaks up. They don't get entangled and problematic and solid in that way. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah, that's a kind of a tricky concept, sensory clarity. That's why we're having the Q&A after, by the way, so that you can ask all these questions that you may have. So equanimity. This last skill is the ability to allow sensory experience to come and go without push and pull. And you can think of equanimity in a few ways. You can think of equanimity as non-judgment, right? So whatever your experience is, it is neither good nor bad. Suspending judgment when you're doing practice, just for a moment, not saying, I should be feeling this way or I should not be feeling this way, but just doing your best not to place a judgment on it, right? So that's a kind of a mental equanimity. To get to the point where you're willing to say, this is neither good nor bad, this is just what's happening in this moment. And Hal actually, I don't know if he's here right now, but Hal refers a lot to that emotional resistance, right? So the judging mind comes up when we're emotionally resistant to something. This shouldn't be happening, right? So we want to start to develop a non-judgment in our minds. And then the other side of it is actually physiological. We want to we're in the habit of, once again, resisting what's painful and clinging to what's pleasant. And the unfortunate thing about that is we do it on a micro level, in tiny little ways. We resist what's painful, we cling to what's pleasant, and that has the effect of clogging our arteries in a sense. That has the effect of stifling our energy. Because what happens is, so let's say something really wonderful happens, you want to hang on to it, but it's floating away, it's drifting away, right? So we've had this sometimes maybe after a really pleasant yoga class or something, you have this great bliss state, and you really want to hold on to it, but it fades away. And what happens if we try to hold on to it while it's fading is that then that falls us out of, takes us out of the present moment. So now we're not actually being with what's truly happening. Now we're still holding on to that thing that already happened. And so in little ways, we keep ourselves from being present, and we create blockages in our energy. So does that make sense to everybody? So on a physiological level, you can work with, you can develop equanimity by doing your best, for example, to relax around pain and allow the energy in the pain to release to the best of your ability. And actually, same thing around pleasure. You relax a little bit around pleasure. Any gripping that you have around it, start to let go of. So non-judgment and not pushing or pulling on your experience. So now, we're going to actually do a practice. And, two more definitions before we get into that. Noting. The act of noticing your sensory experience and focusing on it intently and gently for a few moments. Okay? So let's just say that, and in fact, this is what we're going to do. Let's say you're focusing on relaxation in the body. And let's say, okay, you're noticing that, wow, on the exhale, I feel really relaxed on the exhale. So you bring your attention to the exhale, and you stay with that feeling of relaxation for a few moments, right? And then you realize, oh, wow, you know what? My hands actually feel very relaxed. So you bring your attention to your hands, and you stay with that experience of relaxation for a few moments. And then, oh, wait a minute, my breath again. Oh, you go back to the breath. Or maybe you just stay at the breath. You just keep bringing your attention back to the breath and stay with it for a few moments. It's that rhythm that we call noting. Noticing and staying with. Noticing and staying with. Noticing and staying with. Noticing and staying with. I forgot to mention, actually, concentration power. You want to know how we build concentration power? Everybody has a hard time with this distracted mind, right? What do you do when the mind is distracted? I can't stop my thoughts. I hear that one a lot. I've tried meditating, but I can't stop my thoughts. So the good news about this way of doing things is you don't ever have to stop your thoughts. You don't have to worry about that. You work with the conditions that are. And you want to think, going back to this gym metaphor, you want to think of your thoughts as gravity, right? The distracted mind is just the gravity that you are working against to build your concentration power. So every time your mind wanders and you bring it back, it's in the bringing the attention back that you're doing that rep at the gym. And it's that act that is building your concentration power, right? So over and over, and so then the distracted mind is no longer a problem because it just serves to strengthen your concentration power every time you bring your attention back. Does that make sense? So sensory experience in this system we're working with, and labeling, one more thing. To think to yourself or say out loud a word or phrase that describes what you're noting. So this just means this is a helpful tool. If you're finding that you're really struggling with distraction, for example, you can actually say in your mind what it is that you're focusing on. So we're going to use the word feel rest to describe physical relaxation. So every time you notice relaxation, you would just say to yourself, feel rest, right? Or if you're by yourself, you could say it out loud if that helps you. Feel rest. So you're bringing your attention to the relaxation and saying feel rest and staying with it for a few moments. Bringing yourself to the relaxation, saying to yourself feel rest and staying with it for a few moments. That helps keep you on track with your noting practice. It's optional. Most people use it if they're finding that they're really struggling with distraction. I use it all the time just to give you, a point of reference. I've been meditating for 20 years. I find labeling extremely helpful. So it's not like a beginner's tool. It's something that's useful. Okay, so, right. A lot of people get drawn to meditation because they're interested in relaxing. Who here would like to learn how to relax more deeply? Anybody? Okay, good show of hands. I thought that might be the case. So I wanted to give you an exercise that you can take away with you now if you choose to do in your period of silence. Now you have a way to deepen your relaxation, and or if you're struggling with distraction, work with it productively. So this is both a strengthening and a restorative exercise depending on your state of mind at any given time. Okay? So before we begin, does anyone have any questions about these definitions? Okay. My guess is we'll have some questions after we get into the experiential part. And I actually hope you do, because questions are a great tool for learning. And my goal here is for you guys to walk out of here completely clear about what you're doing. So ask questions after, because if you're even slightly thinking it, maybe the person next to you is really thinking about it, and you can help them. You can be of service to them by asking your question. Okay, great work, everybody. Really, great work. For some of you, that may have been the longest you've ever sat in silence. I would love to now open it up for questions and reports. And John's going to come up and help me moderate. Awesome.
Looks like there's no questions. So let me do this. If we could start over here, just because I love to see Chandler move. There's a reason that we do it this way. That was awesome. Thank you. So cool.
How long was that?
Oh, say that again, sir.
How long was that?
25 minutes.
And is there any point...
Is that a what? Like, wow, that long? Or what? Like, that was too short.
No, it felt like a long time to me.
Okay.
In the beginning, it was easy. As time went on, it was hard for me to stay blank.
Right.
Is there any points on posture?
On posture, absolutely, yes. You want to keep your spine nice and tall, and your shoulders relaxed and back, and your jaw nice and relaxed, your spine, your neck tall, and your jaw relaxed. So, yeah, when you're doing these exercises, best to take a formal position. You can be seated like you are right now, or if you like doing lotus or half lotus, or sitting on a bench. Some people like to do that as well. But it's perfectly fine to sit in a chair if that's what you feel comes most naturally to you.
Cool. Thank you. Chandler, while you're up here, let's just go with the two right in front, please.
As far as counting your breath, do you recommend counting your breath? Like, to begin,
counting your breath?
Yeah.
So in other words, as a way to keep your concentration on track?
Yeah.
If that works for you, absolutely. My rule of thumb is, if it's working for you, keep doing it. I'm just giving you options. So counting your breath is absolutely a legitimate way to keep your concentration on fact. It's sort of on par with labeling. Same idea. It'll just keep you focused.
And one more thing, I do this. I got a program my buddy gave it to me. Is there any validity to a hollow sync meditation?
Is there any? Sorry, what?
Hollow sync meditation. It's like for alpha waves inducing, because that's what your body produces. Your brain produces alpha waves when you meditate.
Right.
So inducing alpha waves through it's called hollow sync meditation. My buddy gave it to me. I've been doing it. I'm not sure. It's been working for me, but I don't know if you know anything as far as like inducing alpha waves while you meditate.
Right. Well, I mean, I would say that as a rule of thumb, if it's working for you, once again, keep doing it. But bear in mind that we want to get to the point where all of life is a meditation. In other words, that there's not one thing that gets you into a particular state. Meditation goes beyond that. So as long as you keep the big picture in mind, if that helps you drop into deep states and you enjoy that, then by all means, keep doing it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay, so my question is, how do you keep your mind active enough to where you're staying awake but not so active, you're like ADD and thoughts are bouncing around all over? Because I do meditate on a daily basis, but I'm either like ADD where I'm like, pew, 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 and then, or then like I just catch myself like nodding off.
Right, yes. That is a real challenge. So let's see. There are a couple of questions in there, actually. Let's address this, ADD thing first. So in this system, there are a few ways you can work with that experience. Number one, I would recommend spoken labels. Because spoken labels, when you're bouncing around, at least you know that you're going to get in some quality time, that you're not going to, kind of wake up from your ADD state 10 minutes after you sat down only to realize that you've been thinking about what's in your fridge the whole time or whatever it may be. So if you do those spoken labels, that injects enough of the skills that we talked about so that you know that you're having a productive time. It may not feel good. I mean, we don't go to the gym and expect it to feel good. It's a workout. So if you just understand that the not feeling good of, it's like your mind is a wild horse at those moments, right? And it's challenging to wrangle a wild horse. So do your best to bring equanimity to that wrangling experience. Just the fact that you're attempting to do it and implementing the skill of, using those labels, that's good enough. And over time, you'll find, it's a long distance run, over time you'll find that gets better. Another thing I want to point out, though, is that if possible, when your attention is bouncing around like that, what's happening literally in your mind? What's happening is that your attention is scattering, right? And it also tends to be rapid fire, right? So this is part of sensory clarity. Recognizing, there's this scattering, and there's this speed happening. If you can actually participate in that with your attention, because you're a meditator, you might know what I mean by that. In other words, do your best to go with the speed, the raciness of it. Go with the scatteredness. Let yourself get disoriented. Use the energy that's bound up in the blah, 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 to take you where it needs to take you. Do your best to go along for the ride of that and not fight with it. Does that make sense? Cool. And what was the first half of that question? Staying awake, right. If you have trouble staying awake, straighten your spine, relax, and you can actually work with your eyes open. I recommend that for people who struggle with sleepiness. Work with your eyes gently open. You can have them at half-mast. You can actually have them wide open, whatever you're comfortable with. And then once again, those spoken labels are great for sleepiness as well.
So I always wonder if I'm doing it right or wrong. And I know the difference between sleep and non-sleep. And it seems like when I do meditate and I have ADHD and I have all these crazy thoughts, but then once I get there, it's like I'm gone. Like I can just hear you, but I couldn't hear anything you were saying. But I mean, I was gone, and then all of a sudden I came back. But people talk about a conscious meditation, and people say they're very awake, and so I'm just trying to figure. I don't think I'm sleeping, so is that where I'm trying to get? Is that like It sounds funny, like this enlightenment, like I'm really, like I'm gone.
I understand what you're
Is
saying.
that where I've been trying to get? Is that what I'm...
He did it!
Well, so I have a few things to say about that. Number one, there is no place we're trying to get. So that's the good news is that any state that was happening in this room, including the bouncing off the wall state, is all grist for the mill, right? It's all going to grow our skills. So really, you can relax on that one, although we never do. We hear it a million times, but still we're like, I want that state, that gone state, because that sounds really delicious. And it is, right?
Yeah.
When you have that gone experience, yes, what's nice about that is, I talked earlier about emotional well-being, energy, and what was the third thing? Tranquility, right? So you're describing a deep state of tranquility. And as we get more and more absorbed, concentrated in these deep states of tranquility, yes, we disappear into that tranquility, and it's refreshing, right?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
delicious and it's effortless,
Yeah.
and it's like you're suspended in this wonderful place where you don't have to do anything, like someone hit the pause button.
Well, it's like you're gone. I mean, you're just...
You're gone.
Yeah, it's...
That's right.
It's awesome, so yeah.
That's right.
okay.
That's right. And you come back renewed. And to the degree to which you're able to bring your skills to bear, what will happen too with sleepiness, you can work with this as well. As you begin to have greater equanimity with the sensations of sleepiness, for example, the sticky, icky sensation that comes up when or that like being pulled into sleep, the wonderful, delicious, as you begin to have some clarity about that, you're bringing these photons of awareness into that sinking into sleep, and interesting things can happen. You're shining the light on the sleeping activity, the going into sleep. So you're in that nice boundary where, yes, you are disappearing. And in fact, whether we are aware of it or not, we are all always disappearing into our experience. It's just the degree of awareness we bring, the consciousness that we have about that happening at any given time.
Well, I was just going to share real quick that, so if you think you have ADHD, so I had it, and so I was on Adderall, took like massive milligrams, like crazy doses, and I just decided that I didn't want to do it anymore, but I really needed to focus. And so someone said, if you meditate, you'll focus. I'm thinking, yeah, me meditate? Seriously? And so I've been meditating consistently, and I have to tell you honestly that I don't meditate every day because I'm just too driven and I just forget to do that. But when I do that, my focus is like laser focus, and it's a true a gift to me, and I'm sure a lot of you will suffer the same thing. Trust in the meditation and trust in that silence, because the time, it's like you're exercising. If you take the time to exercise, your body will transform, and if you take that time and work out your brain, your mind will transform and your life will transform.
Right.
So if that's your calling and that you have that, please meditate.
I planted
please
this guy.
do that. That's right. But please do that, because the one thing about us ADHD people is that we have this stress of like we're not getting anything done, we're spinning, and it actually slows everything down. So I just invite you to do that, because it's truly changed my life. So there you go.
Thank you. Yeah. Chandler. Hey, Chandler. Oh, go ahead. And then we're going to go back. Okay.
I'll just make a quick comment about the ADD and the sleepiness. If you guys don't mind, what helped me with that, because I've been meditating for a while, actually longer than I've been doing Miracle Morning, but what helped me to avoid some of that, like I like the gym metaphor that's been used about working out or whatever else. So I tried to mitigate the amount of that by meditating in the morning. So I wasn't quite as sleepy, or I didn't have quite as many thoughts going through my head, and I practiced with that so that eventually I could work my way up to heavier weight by being able to meditate on a train, on a noisy train, or in a noisy room, or stoplight, wherever, while I'm driving, or but in the middle of the day or even at night, because when I started meditating and I would try and do it before I went to bed, I would just fall asleep. so it didn't work for me.
Yeah,
So-
sometimes it is just a matter of shifting the time of day just to get the thing rolling. The key is, you want to stay motivated to practice. So if you find that there's a time of day that works better for you, by all means do that if that's going to keep you on track.
And that worked for me at the beginning, and then so practicing with a certain time of day helped me to move into those more difficult times of day to meditate.
Right. You want to develop the habit first, whatever that takes.
Back. All right, we're going to go back here. Yep, gray shirt. Right there. Yeah, thank you.
I was wondering if you had any suggestions to teach children to meditate, because I think this would be super helpful for my daughter.
I can help you with that after. Come see me and give me your information and I'll hook you up.
Okay, thanks.
Just get in the line, people. And we're going to take just one or two more. Let's go back to the guy in that great-looking shirt right there.
Okay, so I haven't meditated in like 5 years.
Hey, Rob,
really
stand
just,
up so they can hear you. Yeah.
It really freaked me out because what just happened. So I'm going to be completely honest of what just happened. So the reason why I don't smoke weed anymore is because I get way hypersensitive when I do. Just being honest, I was contemplating whether saying that or not in front of everybody, so now you know. So, because I'm not like an ADD person, I'm not all over the place, I'm pretty laid back, and I feel like it brings me way, way down, like to the point where it starts to freak me out. So, when we first started, my hands were cold, so I took my hands and did this with them, and just kind of had it like that so they'd start to warm up. Well, then probably 5 minutes in, it started to get really hot, and then they felt like they were massive, like it was all I could concentrate on was just my hands, and then like out of nowhere, I was like, oh my God, my heartbeat is like, it is pounding. And it's not fast or anything, it was just like, my heart is really, like, I can feel it. And then it was like, my whole mindset went from my hands being really warm to, oh my God, my heart feels like it's gonna explode. Like it was like, that's what it felt like, where there was the only thing that I could concentrate on. And like he said, like I could hear you, but like you weren't coming through. Mm-hmm. And it was just like my heart, to the point where I was like, I gotta calm down. And so I like kind of got out of it, but it freaked me out.
Okay.
To the point where I was like, that's the reason why I don't even smoke anymore, is because of that exact reason, where I'm like, my heart is going to explode. Like that's
right.
the way that I feel.
Well, I'm really glad actually that you shared that with everyone. I think it's really important for people to know how powerful this can be and to be reassured. So you kind of help people right now by sharing that, whether they're aware of it or not, whether they ever have that experience or not. So here's what I would say about that. So you had this experience of your hands heating up and becoming very big, right? So, and it was all you could concentrate on. So in this system, that would be called expansion, right? The two fundamental forces of energy are expansion and contraction. Things get big and things get small, right? And everything is an interrelationship of this getting very big and getting very small. This is, I'm kind of if this gets too heady, don't worry about it. But you're describing something distinct and I want to address it. So if that happens, then you're doing your best. Partly what can happen then is that it triggers fear, because you feel overwhelmed by what's happening. Is that accurate? Did you feel like it was getting big and you were disappearing, or? Yeah, that's right. So, and that can be terrifying to the ego, to the mind. The mind says, wait a minute. The mind associates that with death, let's be frank. So when you have something happen like that, this getting big happens, you start to disappear, and your mind goes, wait a minute, where am I going? Whoa, hold on, I gotta stop this. So you want to do your best. First of all, it's a window of opportunity, whether it felt that way or not. It's a window of opportunity to deepen your practice, because what you want to get to is the point where your mind is willing to disappear in that moment, because you've done it enough times that you know, oh, I'm going to bounce back, I'll come back. I can just disappear right now. That's perfectly fine. So you want to begin to trust what's happening in that moment. When it gets very big and you get very small, do your best to trust it and disappear for a minute, and you'll come back, no problem. But the other thing is, if you find that you get overwhelmed by fear, That's where your equanimity and your sensory clarity come back into play. Like I described before, if someone has a pain in their knee and they get frightened about it and they think, oh my God, I've injured myself permanently. Same thing happened just then. You had yourself responded to what was happening. The thing got very big, the experience got very big, you started to disappear, that fear kicked in. So if that fear kicks in and gets overwhelming, you can turn your attention to the fear and work with it with equanimity. In other words, do your best. Okay, where's the fear located? Okay, how can I bring greater acceptance to the fear I'm experiencing? Right? Can I soften around it and let it release? So you're finding ways to work with the fear if it comes up so that you can acclimate. Because like it or not, not everybody, mind you, has whacked out experiences like that. I can relate because I happen to also have trippy psychedelic experiences, but not everybody does. But just to reassure you, you seem like the type of guy who's going to have those experiences. I know you well enough to know. So you're going to have to adapt. You're going to have to get comfortable with it because it's going to happen, okay? And the more you can learn how to adapt and work with it and go with it, the deeper you're going to go in your practice. Does that make sense? Awesome.
We're going to take one more.
I'm sorry. Can you give some insight into the labeling thing, just for someone who's like, it feels like there's something intuitive there, but I can't really put like a nail on it. So just for someone who's starting out with the labeling thing, can you share some insight?
So, sorry, let me just ask you another question. So when you say give insight into it, what exactly do you need to know about it?
I feel like the noting part, like I've gotten that part, but the labeling, like actually, like...
Is it where the labeling happens?
Maybe some basic labels or just some things like...
yes, right, yes, okay. Yes, I understand. It's tough to cram all this information into one session. So in the example that I gave you, you can refer to... There are 4 labels that we're working with. C is any activity that's visual. And that can mean with your eyes open. If you happen to practice with your eyes open, visual activity would be C. So if you're seeing the environment, that would be C. A lot of people don't like to work with their eyes open, but for some people it's very interesting. So eyes closed, C would be any image activity happening on the screen, right? Then C rest refers to that blank mental screen that I described. And then feel refers to any activity going on in the body, and that can actually be physical or emotional, right? And then feel rest refers specifically to, that's right, the relaxation or even emotional peace would qualify as feel rest. Is that what you need? Great, okay, cool. All right, you guys, well, this was a total treat, and I'm here, so feel free to, come ask me whatever questions we didn't get a chance to cover. And I thank you all for your hard work, and I thank John and Hal for inviting me here today. Thank you. You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Oh, please don't leave the room. Julianna, back up on the stage. Oh. Back up on the stage. I got a 2-minute thing, and then we're going to send you off to lunch. First of all, can we give one more big round of applause to Julianna? Thank you, by the way. That was amazing. A great addition to the event. Can you see why we wanted to bring her to our Quantum Leap Mastermind group? We wanted to give you more value. And I think I just decided the first session that we have, we're going to have everybody smoke pot before we get on the phone together. How cool would it be to get stoned with Julianna? Oh my gosh, it'd be amazing.
I'm going to teach you how to get stoned without pot.
There you go. Cool. And I'm putting her on the spot like I did John Broman. I have a feeling we're going to find a way to bring you to one of our Quantum Leap Mastermind sessions, so we're going to make that happen.
Awesome.
I have a comment, or a story and then a comment. It's a quick story. The second session I ever had with her, I don't know, you'll probably remember this. I was sitting in a park. I've got my headbuds in. I'm on the phone. I'm sitting on a bench, and she's having me label. So literally, she's sitting on the other side of the phone, and I'm sitting there saying, here in, here out. and I'm just like getting into it. And this is only my second session, so I remember my one little voice is like, this is great. And then all of a sudden I'm saying here in, here out, and I'm in nature, right? And I hear this I'm like, wow, the stream that I was near, I'm like, it just got really loud. And then do you remember what I told you? I'm like,
Yes.
I just opened my eyes and there was someone who had been walking their dog and the dog was peeing right in front of me. Do you remember that?
Yes, very good detection skills.
Yeah.
Sensory clarity.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. But the second thing I wanted to share with you is how profoundly valuable these skills have been for me and how I hope they will be for you. And I'll share a personal example. You know, in the past, when I used to speak or coach or get in front of a group, I used to have these crazy affirmations. I'm like, I'd be in the back of the room. I demand now words, wisdom, doing all this crazy stuff, right? And now, before I come up, I literally sit there and I say, feel in, hear in, see in. I mean, and that's how I prepare to get in front of a group. And that's a place where I would get anxious, and I minimize that. She's helped me to meditate while I'm driving. If you have a commute or you drive, who's in the car a lot? Yeah? I mean, and when she first said we're going to do a driving, I'm like, oh, that's terribly dangerous. And what did I tell you? Within a minute, I'm like, this is the safest driving I have ever done. Because using it, I wasn't on my phone or playing with the radio. It was beautiful. So thank you for the change that you made for me and for everybody here. And I have to say this so that we don't create a challenge for you. I know that a lot of you might have further questions and whatnot, just so you know, so we don't have to pull her or Vroman or anybody aside. We're going to send out after the event, a list of resources, how to follow up and get more information and all that, so you don't feel pressured to do it on this break. So can we give Julianna one more round of applause? Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. All right.